Welcome to episode 281 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Laws Guy. It's August 8, 1979. Nantes, La Jonelière, the brand new training center of FC Nantes. And inside the club's premises sits the Coupe de France trophy. Nantes have just won it for the first time. The club is proud. The trophy is displayed. The story should be simple. Except, overnight, the trophy disappears. Is it stolen? Is it borrowed? A few days later, it turns up in Lorraine, hundreds of kilometers away, in the hands of steelworkers. Not rival fans, not professional thieves, but trade unionists. And they have a message. But how did we get here? Start with the Coupe de France. The competition is born during the First World War. Created in 1917 as the Coupe Charles-Simon, named for the founder of the Comité Français Interfédéral, who died in the war. I told that story in episode 186. From the start, the cup carries something deeply French and democratic. Not in a perfect way, football never is, but in the idea. Clubs from everywhere, big and small, professional and amateur, Paris and province, center and edge. A cup that belongs to French football as a whole. And over time, the final becomes part of the Republic's football ritual. The President of the Republic, the trophy, the walk up the steps, the handshake, the captain lifting the cup. By 1979, the Coupe de France is one of the great institutions of French sport. Now Nantes. FC Nantes are founded in 1943 during World War II. By the 1960s, under José Arribas, they become one of the most important clubs in France. The football becomes famous: movement, passing, collective intelligence, formation, youth, the roots of what later becomes known as Le Jeu de la Nantaise. Nantes win the league in 1965, in 66, 73, and again in 77. So this is not a small club waiting for its first glory. Nantes already know what it means to be champions of France. But the Coupe de France keeps escaping them. Finally in 66, 70, and 73, all lost. 3 times to the final, 3 times no cup. Then 1979. The coach is Vincent. The captain is Henri Michel. The team includes names like Maxime Bossis, Jean-Paul Bertrand Desmanet, Omar Sanoun, Loïc Amis, Oscar Muller, and Éric Pécout. The opponent in the final is Auxerre, and that matters too. Auxerre are still a Division II club. Giroud is building something that will later become one of French football's greatest provincial stories. But in 1979, Nantes are the elite side. The final is played on June 16 at the Parc des Princes in Paris. Nantes score first, Éric Pécout. Auxerre equalized just after halftime through Serge Messonnier. 1-1, and it stays there through 90 minutes. Then extra time. Pécout scores again. Oscar Muller makes it 3-1, and Pécout completes the hat-trick. Nantes 4, Auxerre 1. After all those failed finals, the Canaries finally have the Coupe de France. Henri Michel receives the trophy from President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing. A first cup, a historic cup, the perfect ending to the season. Or so Nantes think, because less than 2 months later, the trophy is gone. August 8, La Jonelière, the club's new training center. A window had reportedly been left open, and the cup disappears from the showcase. At first, people think it's a joke, a collector's prank, something silly. Robert Budzinski, Nantes' former player and sporting director, later says they expected someone to return it quickly. No prosecution, no drama, just give it back. But then the truth emerges. The thieves are CFDT militants from northern Lorraine, steelworkers from around Longwy. And they have not taken the Coupe de France because they care about Nantes or Auxerre. They have taken it because they care about blast furnaces, jobs, factories, a whole way of life disappearing. The late 1970s are brutal for the steel regions of Europe. Longwy is one of those names that carries industrial weight. Steel, smoke, furnaces, workers, pride, and crisis. Factories are threatened. Professions are disappearing. Communities are being told that the future has no place for them. So the steelworkers decide they need attention. And they understand something very modern. If normal protest is ignored, steal the object everybody photographs. They called it borrowing, not theft. One of the activists, Robert Giovanardi, later explains the point. They wanted to invent something spectacular enough to influence public opinion. He also says you didn't have to be Arsène Lupin, the fictional gentleman thief, to pull it off, which is a wonderful line, because no, this is not Ocean's 11. This is a football trophy, a training center window, and desperate people with a media strategy. The cup is taken to Longwy. It is displayed. The activists pose with it, sometimes uncovered, sometimes with balaclavas. There are photographs, a market scene, workers holding the Coupe de France like a political hostage. Imagine the image, a trophy presented by the President of the Republic in Paris, won by Nantes at the Parc des Princes, now in the hands of steelworkers in Lorraine, being used to say, "Look at us, we're still here." And then, just as quickly, the story turns gentle. The trophy is returned. August 12, the cup is put back where it had been taken. The steelworkers even offer Longwy enamel or earthenware plates to the club's leaders and players, an apology gift, a little ceremonial exchange after a symbolic abduction. Giovanardi later insists they took good care of the cup. They didn't even drink from it, he said. And that may be my favorite detail of the whole episode. Even the revolutionary trophy borrowers had standards. But so what? This is a funny story. We should let it be funny. The Coupe de France is stolen by steelworkers, returned with plates. Nobody drinks from it. The trophy goes on a short political holiday to Lorraine. That is good football nonsense. And OTD has room for good football nonsense. But the story lasts because it is not only funny, it's also sad. The action did get attention. It made people talk. But it didn't save the industrial world those workers were fighting for. The plant closures continued. The steel crisis continued. Longwy's pain didn't disappear because the Coupe de France had briefly become a protest banner. This also tells us something about the Coupe de France. Of all the trophies to borrow, this one makes symbolic sense, because the Coupe de France is not meant to belong only to elite football. It's the People's Cup, the Open Cup, the cup of villages, towns, factory clubs, amateur sides, overseas teams, old regional identities, and giant killings. So when steelworkers take it, they're not simply taking silverware from Nantes. They're borrowing the most democratic football object in France and dragging it into the most democratic argument in France. Work, dignity, visibility. Who gets remembered when an economy changes? For Nantes, 1979 becomes even more unforgettable. They don't just win the first Coupe de France. They win the cup that gets stolen, the Steelmakers Cup. And that nickname is perfect because it adds a second life to the trophy. The first life was Éric Pécout's hat-trick, Henri Michel lifting the cup, Nantes finally ending the final curse. But the second life is Longwy, CFDT, balaclavas, plates, and the return to La Jonelière. That is how football memory works. A cup final becomes a season. A stolen trophy becomes folklore. And the mystery has an afterlife. The real trophy is returned to the French Federation. But later, according to Nantes accounts, the replica of the 1979 cup that remained at La Jonelière disappears too. This time, no heroic workers, no political statement, no porcelain plates. Just gone. Nobody really knows where it is. Maybe sitting in someone's family home. Maybe lost forever. Maybe waiting for its own comeback. So the 1979 Coupe de France remains cursed in the most charming possible way. One after 3 failed finals, borrowed by steelworkers, returned with apologies, then followed by a replica that vanished into mystery. And finally, this episode reminds us that football objects carry power. A shirt, a scarf, a stadium, a trophy. They're not powerful because of metal or fabric. They're powerful because people agree to care. In 1979, the Longwy steelworkers understood that. They could have issued another statement, held another rally, printed another leaflet. Instead, they borrowed the Coupe de France, and for a few days, France had to look. Before we go, 3 things to take away from August 8, 1979. First, Nantes' 1979 Coupe de France was already historic. After final defeats in 66, 70 and 73, the Canaries finally won the trophy, beating Auxerre 4-1 after extra time. Second, the theft was political theatre. CFDT steelworkers from northern Lorraine took the cup to draw attention to the closure of blast furnaces and the disappearance of their profession. Third, the story works because the Coupe de France is the People's Cup. The object was borrowed from a football club, but the message was about workers, dignity, and being seen. On this day in 1979, the Coupe de France disappeared from Nantes training center. A few days later, it reappeared in Lorraine. The steelworkers gave it back. They gave plates as an apology, and one of French football's strangest trophy stories entered folklore. That's all for episode 281 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Lost Guy. If you enjoy stories like this, I ask you to help OTD getting pushed in front of new people. We are past 400 followers of the show now, but why stop there? Hit the subscribe button, rate the show 5 stars, or share it with your friends. Then more people can join in. Thank you so much. Tomorrow, we go to August 9, 1942, and the sad story of the death match. It has to be told, so we never forget. See you then.